Coming up on today's show, I want to run through the latest surrounding Amari Cooper and his contract holdout, as he did, I guess we'll call it an interview. It's more of a conversation that was on TikTok with a gambling company, and he talked about what he is looking for and why he was not at minicamp and OTA. So we'll break that all down on today's show, and plus talk about where Cooper might rank in extension priority among some other players on the team. Now, before we look at what Cooper had to say, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do so, because we're going to keep you guys informed for all major storylines surrounding the Cleveland Browns, every single roster transaction. We do game day watch parties, plus we're doing Madden watch parties during the summer to keep you guys entertained until the season gets underway. And everything I just said is completely free. So join over 34,700 strong here at the Cleveland Browns Report. Now, Cooper did an interview, which is a very formal way of saying a TikTok, with a gambling company I had never heard of, Betr, we'll call it. And in that video that kind of went viral-ish, he said, "I'm trying to get paid this year." Now, the person conducting the interview with Cooper said, "You're a great route runner, but I think I could beat you in a race." And Cooper turned down this offer to do a race because he didn't want to pull a hammy or something. And then that quote right there has been applied to all for the reasoning as to why Cooper didn't come to minicamp, because he doesn't want to get injured in search of a new contract or a new raise, as he is currently scheduled to make $20 million this season. I don't think Cooper, anything he said, is groundbreaking news or anything that's like, whoa, eye-popping. Like, sure, he said he wants to get paid, and I know some people have taken that and ran with that title. I don't think it's anything to run with majorly. Like, who doesn't want to get paid, right? He's making $20 million this year, so it's hard to have a little bit of empathy for him, because that's about 20,000 times more than I'm making right now. But the point being is, like, Amari Cooper, he's trying to get more cash as he's coming off back-to-back really good seasons in Cleveland. So it's more than just the cash, though, and I think that's what's maybe a little bit important, is he didn't bring up any talks of adding years on to his contract. And the first reports we got from Brad Stainbrook at the Orange and Brown Report weren't about the cash. It was more about the length. Like, that's what's been the separator between Cooper and the Browns. Stainbrook wrote a few weeks ago, "The negotiations are ongoing, but money is not the main issue. The Browns are willing to give Cooper an increased salary for this season. The sticking point is the length of the deal. The Browns have yet to offer Pro Bowl wide receiver Amari Cooper a contract extension longer than 1 year," a league source tells the OBR.com. Ultimately, I think something will get worked out. If everything Brad said is true, and I think it's fair to assume that, because those aren't wild demands or requests from either side, at the very least, there will be a raise given, right? Amari Cooper, I don't think, is going to sit out of the entire 2024 season in search of a new deal. I don't think it's going to be like a Le'Veon Bell situation. So if that's the case, then he will accept at least a raise from $20 million to probably, like, I don't know, 21, 22, an extra $2-3 million topped off. Or we'll see the Browns cave, and if that's the case, we'll see Amari Cooper get a 2-year extension. If it's a 1-year contract extension, then I think both sides kind of compromised a little bit. The Browns added an extra year to his deal despite being a 30-year-old wide receiver, and that's terrifying to teams. And Cooper gets another year added to his contract and is under books for 2 seasons. And if he has a down year this year, he's not going to make half of what he would make if he didn't sign an extension before the season gets underway. Now, I'm not concerned about Amari Cooper's production level and willingness to bet and wager on it for the future. The guy comes off back-to-back 1,100-plus yard seasons, 14 touchdowns. It seems like he's playing the best football of his NFL career right now, compared to the last 2 years in Dallas versus the first 2 years in Cleveland. More targets, fewer receptions by 10, way more yards. His average is up. So you might think the lazy take would be, oh, Amari Cooper, as he gets older, isn't as explosive as a receiver. No. His average is up to 16.1 yards a reception, and he's hauling in 14 touchdowns compared to 13 the previous 2 years in Dallas. So I've got no concerns or qualms over Amari Cooper's ability to keep playing at a high level. He's been available for his entire NFL career, essentially. I don't see that slowing down. I think Cooper is someone worth betting on. Now, I want to ask a question here before we get to the rest of today's video and talk about some hurdles that Cooper could be running into for this extension. Who do you think was the better receiver in Cleveland only? Amari Cooper through 2 years or Jarvis Landry through 4 years? I think what Cooper has done, and sure, this is probably a little bit of recency bias kicking in, has been better than, unfortunately, what Juice provided for 4 years. But that's from a stats perspective. Like, I recently saw the resurfaced video of Jarvis Landry when the Browns were on Hard Knocks in the wide receiver room, telling everyone, if you're not hurt, get on the field because that shit's contagious. And that right there was a huge jolt to the turnaround in the culture. So I don't want to forget how important and instrumental Landry was for the turnaround for the Browns, but I think from an on-the-field perspective, it's got to go to Cooper. Now, what could an extension look like? This is just what I think the Browns may have offered. This is not anything I'm hearing or, league insider info. No, just my gut tells me the Browns probably gave Amari Cooper a 1-year, $21 million extension. Currently making $20 million, so it's a $1 million salary raise. That would make him next year the 16th highest paid wide receiver. Right now, he's at 20, so he's jumping up 4 spots. And for a 30-year-old wide receiver, that's not a bad offer, right? To get $21 million at this stage of your career, that's not easy to come by. Now, what would I do if I were Andrew Berry? Maybe this is me just being a little bit overzealous, but I'm willing to bet on Amari Cooper for the next 2 seasons. I'd give him a 2-year, $21 million on average extension with a total of $42 million and guarantee $30 million. I'm willing to bet that much on Amari Cooper because I think he can play at a high level at the ages of 30, 31, and 32 because there are a lot of receivers that have played at a really high level into their early 30s. And I know that the number 30 is terrifying for running backs, but I don't think we should apply that to wide receivers. And I'll say why in a little bit on today's episode. But I think what one big holdup could be for this extension is where does Amari Cooper rank in the extension priority? The Browns have to find a way to extend a handful of key players on their roster, including Amari Cooper, but also someone like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The upcoming linebacker is entering the final year of his contract, and it makes you wonder, are there hiccups in the Cooper extension talks because the Browns have to save some money in their piggy bank for JOK? And if that's the case, will we see an Amari Cooper extension get done? And if not, is it because they're going to allocate funds to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? I think there are 3 players who could be on the receiving end of an extension soon. Jedrick Wills, JOK, and Amari Cooper. And I know this one sticks out more than the other 2 because these 2 guys have been unquestioned awesome the last few years in Cleveland. Jed Wills, it's been a rocky couple of years so far as the Browns left tackle. But when the Browns added 4 void years onto Jed Wills' contract, to me, that's one of those examples of actions speak louder than words. And I don't think you add 4 void years onto someone's deal that you don't have at least somewhat of a confident state of mind for extending. But JOK, I think he is very, very likely to get an extension done between now and some point before the season ends. It could very well get done during training camp. Often when players come back and the agents are there and the teams are all together, that's when talks really start to progress. JOK last year for the Browns was the only player in the NFL with over 100 tackles and 20-plus tackles for loss. He is one of one in that category. He flourished in Jim Schwartz's defense. Also, he was able to stay healthy for the first time. That was a huge part of his success as well. But he was a great pass rusher, 3.5 sacks, a great playmaker, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and a top 20 linebacker in the eyes of Pro Football Focus. So if I had to take a swing at what these potential extensions could look like, these are numbers that I cooked up that I just think are in the general zip code of what an extension could look like. I could see Jed Wills getting a 3-year, $32 million extension that pays him a little over $10 million a season. I know Jed Wills has been very polarizing, but the Browns may view $10 million at left tackle as a steal. JOK, I could see getting a 3-year, $38 million extension. We saw Grant Delpit get 3 years, $36. This is a little bit more for their rising linebacker. Pays him $12.6 million. That would make him the 5th highest paid linebacker in football, by the way. And then Amari Cooper, I could see both sides kind of agreeing on just a 1-year extension at $21 million, a $1 million raise from what he is currently making this year. Now, if you would extend one player between Amari Cooper and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who would you extend? Coop or JOK? I want to know in the comment section who you would rather extend. I'm torn. My answer is like yes, and I know it's kind of a cowardly way out, but I do think it is possible to get both of these extensions done. If I really had to pick one gun to my head, I would probably go with Amari Cooper. I know JOK is a lot younger. It's just, I feel like the wide receiver position is just that much more instrumental. And as the Browns kind of chase that ring for the next 2 or 3 years, Cooper, I think, could have a bigger impact on that. But I don't think it's one or the other. But if you had to pick one, who would it rather be? Ultimately, I think the Browns need Amari Cooper to blink first in these contract extension talks. They clearly want to get a deal done with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and if that is the case, it may be tough to spend on both of these players. I do think it is possible to extend both, but they probably can't give Cooper a 2-year extension and then give JOK a 3-year extension. At some point, there's just not going to be enough slices of the pie to go around. So I think for the Browns to get both those deals done, they need Cooper to agree what they are currently offering, according to reports, a 1-year extension, and then they can give JOK a 3-year extension at about $38 to $40 million and make him the 5th highest paid linebacker in football. But I think for both of those deals to get done, it'll have to be Cooper that comes down from his asking price of a 2-year extension, and he blinks first, and then the Browns can extend both of their star players. Now, before we talk about Amari Cooper and whether or not extending a 30-year-old wide receiver at his age is a good idea, for all the older fans watching right now, if you want to get your hands on a Cleveland Browns Legends jersey, the great late Jim Brown, go to chatsports.com/Jim Brown. Their jerseys are currently 25% off when you use our link. I put this in the comments and description of today's video. So if you want to get your hands on one of the best to ever suit up in brown and orange, chatsports.com/Jim Brown. Now, what about a 30-year-old wide receiver getting an extension? Well, the contract extension wouldn't kick in until Cooper is 31 years old. So I don't think it's wise to look at what 30-year-old wide receivers are going to do or have done because Cooper's 30 this year. We want to know what are 31-year-old wide receivers doing. Keenan Allen last year at 31 had the best year, arguably, of his NFL career when factoring in the quarterback circumstances he had to deal with Justin Herbert going down. He had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins, over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns between Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis in a really bad offense in Tennessee. And then Adam Thielen, the oldest of the bunch at 33, over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns plus 103 grabs. But I go back to DeAndre Hopkins. I remember Andrew Berry once sharing in a press conference how he keeps a diary of mistakes and transactions he made or wish he didn't make or wish he did make. And then I think about last offseason when Hopkins was a free agent and everyone was begging for the Browns to sign Hopkins to reunite him and Deshaun Watson. And ultimately, Cleveland didn't do it. And then they ran into some wide receiver woes this year. They traded DPJ away. They wanted to see a bigger improvement from rookie Cedric Tillman. And now I wonder a year later if a reason why we didn't see the Browns sign DeAndre Hopkins was because Barry was concerned about the age factor for D-Hop. 30 years old. Is that someone you want to sink your teeth in for the next 2 or 3 years? And I bet if he could undo it, he probably would. And he probably would have signed DeAndre Hopkins. But now he's got a chance to right that wrong. He's got a 30-year-old wide receiver in Amari Cooper who was playing just as well as D-Hop was last offseason, if not better. And he's got a chance to extend that player. And so if he regrets not doing that with DeAndre Hopkins last year, not signing him to a 2-year deal, I hope this year he remembers, I wish I did that with Hopkins. Let's not make the same mistake twice because a guy's 30 years old. Let's get Amari Cooper locked down for the next season or 2. Now, it's also worth noting that if your argument for not extending Amari Cooper is, well, the Browns can just go draft a young wide receiver in round 1 next year and get him for 1/20th of the price, that's not wrong, but you're also making a big assumption that that first-round pick will be as good as Amari Cooper. And let's just be honest. The Browns have not had a ton of success at drafting wide receivers. Now, they have not taken one with Andrew Berry in rounds 1 or 2, but the early indications, while it's too early for Cedric Tillman to rule on, are not great for David Bell. It was a failure for Anthony Schwartz. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, by far the best of the bunch, and unfortunately, he was moved on after 3.5 seasons. But it was a 6th-round pick that was an absolute steal. So, not ideal for the Browns when it comes to drafting and developing wide receivers. So, I would caution you to avoid just jumping to conclusions that, well, the Browns could take one in round 1 and he'll be awesome. Haven't had the best luck at drafting receivers. All right, before we get on out of here, we're going to pick a card. We got producer Reed hanging out with us. Which card do you want to go with, Mr. Barkus?
Let's see here. 10 of clubs.
10 of clubs?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go with the 8 of spades.
I was thinking 8 too, but...
Nope. 3 of diamonds. 3 of diamonds.
Okay.
All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy day two of the NBA draft. Is Bronny a Cav? We're going to find out.